I thought this year would be different. I told myself that on the drive up to Silverwood, watching the snow settle into soft white layers on the highway guardrails. I told myself again when I carried Leo's overnight bag up my mother's porch steps. And I told myself a third time when we stepped into her living room at 9:52 that morning, just in time to watch my 7-year-old son realize he didn't exist in this family at all. The moment it happened wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, almost delicate, like a snowflake landing on your hand and melting before you notice. The room glowed with Christmas lights and glossy wrapping paper. My sister Carla's kids, Kayla, Mason, and little Ruby, sat knee-deep in gifts, shrieking with delight as they tore into one box after another. iPads, drones, robotics kits, a new mountain bike with neon spokes. Their laughter bounced off the walls the way Christmas laughter is supposed to. But Leo sat beside me on the carpet, legs folded tightly under him, hands tucked into the sleeves of his sweater as if trying to take up as little space as possible. Every time a gift was passed out, he leaned forward just a little, hope flickering across his face like a candle almost out of wax. And every time, the name on the tag was not his. 36 gifts, bright and loud and overflowing with joy. Not one of them for my son. And that was the moment, in that glowing, glittering room, that something inside me cracked clean in half. My mother, Diane, floated from child to child as if starring in her own holiday commercial. She wore a pastel sweater dress, hair curled, lipstick perfect, holding her phone at the perfect angle to capture each delighted gasp from Carla's children. "Kayla, sweetie, show Grandma again. Lift it up, yes, just like that." She didn't glance at me. She didn't glance at Leo. It was as if the two of us were part of the furniture, quiet, unobtrusive, not important enough to disturb the flow of her perfect holiday performance. Carla perched on the couch beside her husband Neil, sipping peppermint cocoa like royalty observing her subjects. "Open the big one, Mason. Mom saved the best for last." Her voice was bright and theatrical. Neil filmed the whole thing as if his kids were celebrities. No one looked at Leo, not once. He kept smiling at first, that careful, hopeful smile kids use when they're trying not to show disappointment, the kind that makes your chest hurt when you realize they're practicing bravery they shouldn't have to know yet. I leaned closer. "You okay, buddy?" He nodded quickly. "Yeah, I'm just watching." More gifts flew around the room. Kenmore robotics kit, VR goggles, limited edition Lego sets taller than Leo's legs. The whole place looked like a toy store explosion, glitter and ribbons everywhere. Through it all, Leo sat obediently still, eyes tracing shiny boxes like he was afraid of hoping too loudly. I kept waiting for my mother to notice, waiting for a pause, a glance, a flicker of awareness, but she never broke stride. "Ruby, sweetheart, open Grandma's favorite one." She clapped when the little girl held up a plush unicorn almost the size of her. I scanned the tree again, checking every tag left under the branches. Kayla, Mason, Ruby, Carla, Neil. Not one card with Leo's name. Not one small package tucked behind another. Nothing. The last present was a bright silver box with a fat red bow. My mother handed it dramatically to Kayla, who squealed and tore into it as if competing for a prize. Leo stared so hard at that box I could almost feel his breath catch. When it opened to reveal a tablet with a shimmering case, the room erupted in applause and happy chaos. And Leo whispered, barely audible, Did she forget me, Mom?" I swallowed. My heart felt like it had been dipped in ice water. Carla leaned over the arm of the couch, pretending to tidy up scraps of wrapping paper, and murmured, loud enough for me to hear, "I told you Nora would get dramatic if Leo didn't get something big." Neil smirked. My jaw tightened. Leo didn't react. He was still staring at the empty space beneath the tree. My mother straightened up, brushing glitter from her sleeves as if she'd completed some noble duty. "All right, everyone, breakfast in 30 minutes. I looked at Leo. His small shoulders, a little hunched, his hands clenched inside his sleeves, his face still trying to be brave. I understood then that if I stayed 1 minute longer, he would carry this moment in his body for years. So I stood up. "Leo," I said softly, Go get your jacket. He blinked up at me. Now? Now. Carla twisted around, offended. What are you doing? I didn't answer. I crouched down, helped Leo into his coat. His fingers were trembling a little, so I zipped it for him, smoothing the fabric over his chest. He leaned into the motion, letting me steady him. My mother finally tore her eyes from her phone. Nora, for heaven's sake, leaving already? We're just getting started. I held Leo's hand and walked toward the door without responding. She followed, heels tapping sharply on the hardwood. Don't be ridiculous, I'll buy him something tomorrow. Kids forget presents in a week. I turned the knob. Cold winter air hit my face like a truth I'd been avoiding for years. Leo stepped outside, his small boots crunching in the snow. My mother wrapped her arms around herself and said sharply, Nora, stop being dramatic. You're making a scene. I looked at her for one long second. Not angry, not pleading, just done. We're going home, Mom, she scoffed. Fine, but don't expect me to chase after you. I shut the door behind us before she could say more. The world outside was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels honest. Snow drifted softly from the gray sky, settling on Leo's hood. He squeezed my hand as we walked across the icy porch toward the car. I opened his door, helped him climb in. He looked at me through big, glassy eyes. Mom, he whispered, did I do something wrong? I brushed his hair back gently. You didn't do anything wrong, not a single thing. Snowflakes landed on my scarf, melting instantly. Inside the house behind us, laughter still echoed. Big, bright, careless laughter that didn't belong to us. I started the car. Leo turned his face toward the window, watching the world blur white as we pulled away. Not crying, not complaining, just silent. And that silence told me something I would never forget. I wasn't leaving out of anger. I was leaving because my son deserved a world where love didn't have conditions. As we drove down the hill that led away from my mother's house, I realized this Christmas morning would be the last time we ever stepped inside that home as a family. I didn't slam the door. I didn't shout. I didn't create a scene. I simply walked away. And somewhere between the snow-covered pines and the long, empty road home, a cold, steady truth settled into my chest. I wasn't done walking away. This was only the first step. I didn't speak for most of the drive home. Not because I didn't have words, but because every thought I had came out sharp enough to cut skin. The windshield wipers slid back and forth, pushing snow off the glass in long, slow strokes. The quiet rhythm of it felt steadier than anything inside me. Leo sat in the back seat, leaning his forehead against the window, watching the blur of pine trees slip by. He wasn't crying, he wasn't pouting, he wasn't asking questions. And somehow that was worse than all of it combined. When a child goes completely still, that's when you know something inside them has been bent in a way you can't undo. We pulled into our driveway just before noon. The sky hung heavy and pale, as if the world itself hadn't woken up yet. Leo unbuckled his seatbelt and walked inside ahead of me. No running, no holiday excitement, just the small sound of his socks brushing the floor as he made his way down the hallway. He closed his bedroom door gently behind him. Not a slam, not even a click, just a quiet, soft thud that hollowed out something inside my chest. I set the keys on the kitchen counter and stood there for a long moment. The house felt distant, like a place we used to live but hadn't truly come home to in a while. I listened to the silence, the kind that shouldn't exist on Christmas morning, not when you have a 7-year-old. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for the kettle. Maybe a cup of tea would calm me down. Maybe heat would stop the cold bloom of anger in my stomach. I filled the kettle and set it on the stove, but I never turned the burner on. Something in me snapped. Not loud, not dramatic. Just clean, precise, final. I walked straight to my office, closed the door halfway, and sat down in front of my laptop. My reflection flashed briefly in the black screen. Tired eyes, red cheeks, jaw clenched tight. I opened the computer and clicked into the folder labeled Estate Planning. I hadn't opened it in 6 months. The documents glowed on the screen. Life insurance, retirement accounts, the living trust I painstakingly built to ensure Leo would be protected if anything ever happened to me. Back then, I made choices out of habit, out of childhood loyalty, out of obligation. My mother, Diane Ellington, beneficiary. My sister, Carla Winslow, contingent beneficiary. Her children, secondary distribution. Leo was listed, yes, but so were the people who forgot him so easily it barely seemed to register in their minds. I stared at the screen until my jaw stopped trembling. Then I began typing. Effective immediately, I am removing Diane Ellington and Carla Winslow as beneficiaries from all accounts and policies under my name. I typed it slowly, deliberately, line by line, word by word, like I was stitching something shut. I adjusted the distribution. Primary beneficiary, Leo Ellington. 80% secondary beneficiary, Silver Pine Children's Foundation. 20% a clean split. A future that didn't include anyone who treated my son like background noise. I signed digitally, dated it, December 25th. Sent it to my attorney with the subject line, Urgent Update. A minute later, a confirmation pinged. Then a second, then a third. The kettle finally whistled from the kitchen, but I didn't move to turn it off. My phone lit up on the desk beside me. Incoming call, Dad. I stared at the screen for 4 rings before answering. Hey, he said immediately. Not Merry Christmas. Not, how's Leo? He dove straight into what he wanted. Listen, my transmission's dying. The shop quoted me $3,200. Can you spot me till next month? I closed my eyes. He had borrowed money from me for 5 straight years. Car repairs, medical bills, overdue rent, unexpected emergencies, every time the same promise, I'll pay you back. Not once had $1 returned to me. No, I said. Silence. Then a scoff. What do you mean, no? I mean, no, I can't help anymore. You're just mad about this morning. I'm done, I said. Done paying to be everyone's backup plan while my son gets treated like he doesn't matter. My father inhaled sharply. Kids forget presents in a week. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I hung up before he could say anything else. The kettle shrieked louder, loud enough to make the walls vibrate. I walked to the kitchen, turned it off, and just stood there, hands braced against the counter. My phone buzzed again. I didn't look at it. By 6 that evening, I had 30 unread texts and 47 missed calls. Carla, Diane, Dad, Neil, even numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't listen to a single voicemail. When the clock hit 7:15, I finally walked down the hallway to Leo's room. The door was cracked open slightly. I pushed it gently and found him sitting cross-legged on the floor, coloring a picture of a superhero. Cape, mask, all bold primary colors. Hey, buddy, I said softly. He didn't look up right away, but when he did, his eyes were calm. Too calm. Are we going back to Grandma's? He asked. No, I said. Not for a while. He nodded, not relieved, not upset, just accepting, as if he'd already known the answer. He went back to coloring, staying carefully inside the lines. I watched him for a long moment, feeling both proud and devastated. When he finished the page, he held it up. Do you like it? It's perfect, I whispered. He smiled just a little, then put the drawing aside and crawled onto his bed. He pulled his blanket up to his chin, eyes drifting toward the window like he was still watching snow fall on a world that had forgotten him. I sat beside him, brushing his hair back. Merry Christmas, Leo, I said. He whispered, Merry Christmas, Mom. I waited until his breathing steadied and he slipped into sleep. Then I rose quietly, turned off his light, and closed the door. The house was silent again, but this time it didn't hurt. It felt like a border closing, a choice being made, a line I should have drawn years ago. Back in my office, I opened my email. My financial advisor had responded. All beneficiary changes have been updated, effective immediately. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly, They had forgotten my son. But I would not forget a single thing they had done. And if they wanted to call it dramatic, ungrateful, selfish, fine. Let them talk. While they made excuses, I made decisions. While they wrapped gifts for children I didn't raise, I rewrote my son's future. And on the night of December 25th, with snow dusting the world outside and my son sleeping peacefully for the first time in weeks, I made myself one quiet promise. This was only the beginning of the life I would rebuild for him. I found myself staring at the steam rising from my untouched mug of tea long after it had gone cold. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the heater and the faint rustling of the pine wreath hanging on the front door. Leo had fallen asleep on the couch, curled up on his side, one hand tucked under his cheek and the other wrapped around his worn astronaut plushie. He looked peaceful, but only because exhaustion had carried him there. The day had taken something from him, something I wasn't going to let anyone steal again. My phone buzzed on the counter. Another missed call, then another. I didn't even bother checking the number. I wasn't answering. Not tonight. Not anymore. I carried the cold tea to the sink, set the mug down, and stood there, breathing in the silence. It was a different kind of silence than the one at my mother's house. This one wasn't empty. It was a pause, a reset, a moment between who I had been and who I was about to become. I walked to my office, opened the laptop again, and saw the updated beneficiary documents glowing on the screen, waiting for final confirmation. For a long moment I just sat there, staring at my own name on the page. Then I clicked, Confirm. A message popped up. Are you sure you want to proceed? Yes, I was sure. As soon as I hit Submit, a new email appeared from my attorney. We'll need to verify everything by video call. Another popped in. This change will override all previous designations. Then a third, please prepare to confirm your identity. I brushed my hair back, straightened the collar of my sweater, and clicked the meeting link. The camera flickered on. Attorney Marlene Holt appeared, a woman in her 40s with steel-gray hair pulled into a low bun. Her glasses reflected the glow of the screen. Good evening, Nora, she said. Good evening. I see you're making significant adjustments to your estate plan. Yes. Might I ask what prompted such a complete removal of your mother and sister? I thought of the 36 bright, shining gifts, the ribbons, the shrieks of joy, and Leo sitting perfectly still, waiting for just one moment of being seen. It's simple, I said. My son deserves a family that shows up. Marlene nodded without pressing further. She asked me a list of verification questions, had me hold up my ID, repeat a few statements, then pressed Approve on her end. All changes are now active, she said. Is there anything else you need tonight? No, I said. This was enough. We ended the call. I shut the laptop, feeling the weight of a door closing behind me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. I felt aligned, like a compass I didn't know was broken had suddenly swung north. The couch creaked softly, and I turned to see Leo stirring awake. His hair stuck up in every direction, and he blinked slowly, disoriented. Mama? He whispered. I'm right here, I said, moving toward him. He rubbed his eyes with small fists, then crawled into my lap without a word. His body was warm and solid and heartbreakingly small. I wrapped my arms around him, rocking slightly. What were you doing? He murmured into my shoulder. I was making sure you'll always be taken care of. He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did, in some way deeper than language. Kids know the shape of safety, even when they don't know how to name it. Are we seeing Grandma again? He asked quietly. I hesitated. Not for a while. Another small nod. He pressed his cheek against my chest and exhaled softly, the air brushing my collarbone. Something loosened in me, something I hadn't realized was tight. You're safe, I whispered. I promise you're safe. He closed his eyes again, and in less than a minute he was asleep. I carried him to his room, tucked him under the blankets, and kissed the top of his head. Then I turned off the light and pulled the door almost closed, leaving a sliver of hallway glow spilling across the carpet. My phone buzzed again, and again, and again. I didn't look. Instead, I walked back into the kitchen, poured the cold tea out, and filled the mug with fresh water. The kettle hissed softly as it heated. Outside, snow fell in slow spirals under the streetlight. When the kettle whistled, I made a new cup, then set it aside as the screen of my phone lit up across the room. Mom, 16 missed calls. Carla, 14 missed calls. Dad, 18 missed calls. Neil, 5 missed calls. Dozens of messages, fragments flashing across the preview window. Call me now. You're overreacting, Nora. You're hurting Mom. You owe us an explanation. This isn't what families do. I picked up my phone, stared at the glowing screen, then placed it face down. I wasn't obligated to respond. Not anymore. The heater clicked off. The house fell into a deep, comfortable quiet. Then the phone buzzed one more time, vibrating across the counter. I turned it over just enough to see the sender, Carla. I didn't open the message, but the preview line was enough. If you don't talk to us soon, we will escalate this. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My first thought wasn't fear. It was clarity. They didn't want reconciliation. They wanted control. And for the first time, control was something they no longer had. I stepped away from the counter, holding the mug between my hands. Warmth seeped into my palms, grounding me. I walked to the living room and sat on the couch, the same place Leo had fallen asleep hours before. Through the window, the sky had shifted into a deep nighttime blue. Snow continued drifting, catching in the glow of the streetlight like floating embers. The phone buzzed again, another message from Carla. I didn't lift it. Instead, I breathed in the warm air of my own home, feeling everything settle into place. The anger, the hurt, the years of being overlooked, dismissed, and expected to swallow every slight. A different kind of strength settled into me now, quiet, steady, mature. Not the strength that comes from fighting, the strength that comes from choosing not to participate anymore. My son was asleep in a house that loved him. The documents were updated. The boundaries were drawn. Let them escalate. Let them rage. Let them spin their stories. While they were busy trying to hold on to a version of me that no longer existed, I was already walking toward something better. I lifted the mug, took a slow sip, and let the warmth spread across my chest. This was not the end. This was the beginning of a new chapter, for both of us. I woke the next morning to the sound of soft knocking. 3 taps, a pause, then 2 more, the kind of knocking someone uses when they're trying to seem polite but can't hide their impatience. It was barely 8 in the morning. The winter sun hadn't even climbed over the pines behind our house yet. Leo sat at the kitchen table, still in his pajamas, legs dangling off the chair as he drew spirals of stars on a scrap of paper. His hair stuck up everywhere, and he had that sleepy, squinty look that always melted me a little. I was scrambling eggs, pretending everything was normal, pretending yesterday hadn't happened. "Who is it?" he asked, eyes drifting toward the front door. "No one we need to talk to right now," I said, keeping my voice light. I walked quietly to the entryway, peeked through the peephole, and felt my stomach drop. My mother stood on my porch in slippers and a winter coat thrown over her robe, gripping a bright red gift bag like it might explode if she held it any tighter. Her hair wasn't done, her lipstick was smudged, and she looked frantic, raw in a way she never allowed herself to be in public. She knocked again, louder this time. "Nora," she called through the door. "I know you're in there. Open up." I stepped back from the door as if her voice had weight. "Mom?" Leo whispered from the table, his pencil frozen mid-air. "Finish your drawing, sweetheart," I said. "It's okay." It wasn't okay, but he didn't need to carry this part of the day. The knocking escalated, harder, faster, no pretense now. "Nora, this is ridiculous," she said. "We need to talk about yesterday." Talk. As if that word had ever meant anything in our family except stand still while I tell you why you're wrong. She knocked again, and I stayed silent. After a full minute, she let out a long, dramatic sigh, the kind she used whenever she wanted bystanders to assume she was the victim in the situation. Then the doorbell rang twice. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I stayed perfectly still, the way you do when a storm passes close enough to your house that the windows rattle. Finally, she set the red bag on the welcome mat, wiped her hands on her robe, and stomped down the steps. She didn't look back. I waited until her car engine faded down the street before I opened the door. Cold winter air swept inside. The gift bag sat alone on the step, its glossy finish catching the pale morning light. Red tissue paper poked out the top, bright and loud against the snow. I crouched down and picked it up. The weight of it felt wrong, too light, too uncertain. Inside the bag were 3 items: a navy hoodie 2 sizes too big, a stuffed bear that still smelled like plastic, and a small toy car. At the bottom sat a crumpled receipt. I smoothed it between my fingers. Purchased at 8:19 that morning. Not a real apology, just panic, just shame wrapped in dollar store tissue paper. I carried the bag to the kitchen. Leo looked up from his drawing. "Was that Grandma?" "Yeah," I said, setting the bag on the counter. "What did she want?" "She brought these." He peeked inside, expression unreadable. He didn't reach for anything. "Did she buy them for me?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "This morning." He nodded slowly. "Oh." His voice didn't waver, it didn't break, it just accepted. And that acceptance hurt more than any tears. "Do you want to keep them?" I asked. He shook his head. "No." I didn't ask why, I didn't need to. He'd already lived the answer. After breakfast, I grabbed my keys, and the 2 of us drove to the Good Neighbors Donation Center across town. Snow fell lightly, dusting the windshield in soft flakes. Leo held the gift bag in his lap, staring down at it like it was something fragile and sad. Inside the center, a volunteer with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair greeted us. "Holiday donations?" she asked. I nodded. "Something like that." Leo stepped forward and placed the bag on the counter. "I hope another kid likes it," he said. The woman smiled at him warmly. "I'm sure they will, sweetheart." Back in the car, Leo buckled himself in, then looked out the window. "Mom?" he said quietly. "Yeah? Did Grandma forget me yesterday because I'm not fun enough?" My throat tightened. "Leo," I said, "you are everything any child should be. Kind, thoughtful, brave. What happened yesterday says nothing about you. It says everything about the people who forgot to look at you." He didn't say anything else. He just held his astronaut plushie a little closer. We drove home in silence, the kind that wasn't heavy this time, just careful. As we pulled into our driveway, I noticed someone standing on the sidewalk between our house and the Mackenzie's place next door. A bundled figure in a knitted hat and puffy coat leaning on a cane. Mrs. Dougherty. She'd lived on this street for 40 years, babysat half the kids on the block, baked cookies for every holiday. She looked over when she heard our car and lifted a hand. I helped Leo out of the car, and we walked toward the front door. "Nora," she called gently. "A moment." I turned to her. "Morning, Mrs. D. Everything okay?" She studied me with eyes that had seen too much life to miss anything. "I saw your mother leave here earlier," she said. "She didn't look herself." I exhaled softly. "It's been a long week." She nodded knowingly. "I remember when you were Leo's age," she said. "Your mother favored Carla even back then. You never asked for much, but you rarely got it. I've always wondered how that shaped you." The words hit hard, honest and unexpected. "I'm sorry," she continued softly. "Some patterns go on so long, people forget they're doing harm." Leo tugged at my coat sleeve. "Mom, I'm cold." "I know, sweetheart," I said. "Let's go inside." Mrs. Dougherty stepped closer. "If you ever need a witness or someone to speak to what I've seen over the years, don't hesitate to ask." It caught me off guard. A small, unexpected kindness in the middle of a day I thought would be full of nothing but cleanup. "Thank you," I said. Really? She nodded once and shuffled back toward her house. Inside, the house felt warmer than it had that morning. I hung up Leo's coat, then mine. My phone buzzed from the kitchen counter. I didn't want to look, but some instinct made me check. 3 new messages from Carla. The last one read, "If you don't explain yourself soon, we're going to take this further. Don't say we didn't warn you." I stared at the words, the threat buried beneath faux concern. Leo curled up on the couch with his drawing, humming softly to himself. His safety, his softness, his whole heart, everything about him felt precious and breakable, in a way I couldn't ignore anymore. I put my phone face down on the counter, took a slow breath, and let the truth settle over me like snow on quiet branches. They didn't come here to make things right. They came because I stopped playing my part. The kettle clicked on automatically, warming the air with gentle steam. I walked into the living room and sat beside my son, watching him draw constellations with steady little strokes. The world outside could rage as much as it wanted. Inside this house, I was building something different, something safe. Carla's threat lingered in the back of my mind, a storm cloud forming on the horizon. But I didn't answer. I didn't respond. Instead, I leaned back against the couch, closed my eyes, and breathed in the quiet. Let them escalate, I thought. I was ready. Leo was unusually quiet the next afternoon, the kind of quiet that isn't peace but something heavier, like he was carrying a question inside his chest and didn't know if he was allowed to ask it. I found him at the dining table, legs dangling, head bent over a piece of paper where he'd drawn a small house and 3 stick children surrounded by piles of boxes. On the far left edge of the page, almost hidden, was a 4th figure. No gifts, no smile, just standing. My breath caught. "You drew this today?" He nodded without looking up. "Just remembering. Remembering." That word twisted something in my stomach. 7-year-olds aren't supposed to remember. They're supposed to live in the present, soaked in joy, not replaying moments of being forgotten. I pulled out the chair beside him. "Hey," I said softly. "How about we make your room feel a little more... you? Something new, something fun?" He looked up then, eyes searching my face. "Like, redoing it?" "Exactly. You get to pick everything." He blinked, surprised. "Everything?" "Everything," I said. "The color, the bed, the decorations, all of it." A slow smile unfurled across his face, fragile at first, then blooming fully. "Can I pick the paint?" "Yes," I said. "That's the whole point." We grabbed our coats, and he tugged his astronaut plush along with him, as if it were his emotional compass. The drive to the hardware store wasn't long, but the silence between us felt lighter this time. Anticipatory, not bleak. Inside, the aisles were lined with hundreds of color swatches, hanging like tiny paper flags. Leo walked between them slowly, fingers brushing across the edges. Twice he paused, twice he shook his head. Then he stopped before a deep, rich shade of blue. "This one," he said, lifting the swatch carefully. "What do you like about it?" I asked. He studied it as though the answer mattered. "It looks like space, not the scary kind, the kind where you can breathe." Something inside me softened so suddenly I had to steady myself. "Space blue it is," I said. We added paint rollers, brushes, drop cloths, glow-in-the-dark stars, and a pack of planet stickers to the cart. When we checked out, the cashier smiled down at Leo. "Big project?" she asked. "Big room," Leo corrected. "Big change." His tone was simple, but there was meaning beneath it, a kind of bravery I hadn't taught him but admired all the same. At home, we transformed into a tiny renovation crew. We dragged furniture to the center of the room and spread plastic sheets across the floor. I opened the paint can, and the color rose to the surface in a glossy swirl. Leo dipped his brush in too much paint at once, splattering a blob onto the wall. He gasped. "I messed up." "It's okay," I said, guiding his hand. "Painting isn't about being perfect. It's about trying. He nodded and tried again. The second stroke came out smoother. By the eighth, he was humming. We painted for hours, pausing only when our arms got tired or our fingers cramped. He smeared blue paint on his cheek at one point, leaving a streak like a warrior mark. I didn't tell him. It was too endearing to wipe off. By late afternoon, one wall was done completely, 2 others were halfway there, and the room smelled like fresh beginnings. Leo stepped back, hands on his hips. "It looks good," he said. "It looks amazing," I answered. He grinned. A real smile, unguarded and bright, a piece of him coming back online. I tucked him onto the couch after dinner, where he promptly fell asleep mid-cartoon, his hair still carrying faint specks of blue paint. I covered him with a blanket and tidied up the brushes and trays. When I walked back into the hallway, something on the floor caught my eye. A small slip of folded paper sticking out of Leo's hoodie pocket. Curious, I pulled it out gently. It was a rough draft written in his small, careful handwriting. At the top, in pencil, "Family is who remembers you." I pressed the paper to my chest, closing my eyes. Children don't lie. They feel, purely, honestly. And the fact that he had written this alone, quietly, without showing anyone. I breathed in slowly, letting the words settle into me like ink on skin. The next morning, my inbox pinged with a message from Ms. Rayburn, Leo's teacher. "Hi, Nora. Could we speak privately after school today? It's about an assignment Leo wrote yesterday." My heart lurched, not in fear of trouble, but in fear of sadness. I replied yes, and spent the day thinking of that single line he had written. At 3:15, I arrived at the classroom as kids poured out, laughing and bumping backpacks together. Leo held my hand as we walked inside. Ms. Rayburn smiled kindly. "Hi, Leo. Can I talk to your mom for a moment?" Leo nodded and wandered to the reading corner, flipping through a picture book. Ms. Rayburn handed me a paper. "He wrote this today." At the top, "Who shows up?" His words were simple but devastating. "My mom shows up. She makes breakfast. She painted my room blue with stars. She goes to my games and reads with me. She remembers me. My grandma forgot me on Christmas. My mom didn't forget. That's the difference." My vision blurred. I blinked hard, trying to steady myself. Ms. Rayburn spoke gently. "He's resilient, Nora. Incredibly so. But I wanted you to see this because it means he trusts you more than anything else in his world." I nodded. I couldn't speak yet. Leo wandered over, holding the book to his chest. "Did I do okay, Mom?" "You did perfect," I managed, my voice thick. He slipped his hand into mine. "Can we get pizza for dinner?" "Yes," I whispered, "we absolutely can." That evening, we sat in our favorite booth at the pizza place on Maple Street. He had pepperoni slices stacked almost dangerously high, and he giggled when cheese stretched halfway to the table. Sauce smeared across his chin, and he looked lighter, as if the blue walls we painted had peeled away something heavy inside him. When we got home, he ran straight to his room, gasping at how the dried paint looked even richer than before. "It's like night," he said. "Want to add the stars?" He nodded eagerly. Together we arranged the glow-in-the-dark stickers, mapping constellations across his ceiling. Orion, Cassiopeia, the Big Dipper. Leo insisted on adding a shooting star right above his bed. "For wishing," he said simply. Later, as he lay down and the ceiling glowed soft green, he whispered, "I like it better than Grandma's house." "I'm glad," I whispered back. He fell asleep with his face tilted up toward the stars, breathing slow and even. I stood at his door for a long time, watching the light flicker softly over his hair. At midnight, when the house had settled into its quiet hum, I checked my phone. 17 missed calls, 16 texts, the group chat blinking with new messages. "This is childish, Nora. Your mother is devastated. You're being cruel. Talk to us or we'll have to take action." I opened the Christmas video on my phone, the one showing 36 gifts, 3 squealing children, and one little boy sitting alone in the corner of the frame. I uploaded it to the family group chat with one sentence. "This is why." Then I left the chat. I blocked every number that wasn't essential to my life. I locked the phone, walked back to Leo's doorway, and watched him sleep under his star-covered sky. This was the family I chose. This was the child who trusted me. This was the life I was rebuilding. And I knew, without doubt or hesitation, that everything I was doing, every boundary I set, every silence I held, was the right thing. For him. For us. Leo hesitated at the classroom door the next morning, his small hand tightening around mine. Kids were running past us, laughing, zipping up coats, dropping lunchboxes, bouncing with the kind of carefree energy he usually loved. But today he stood still, shoulders tense. "What if Ms. Rayburn didn't like what I wrote?" he whispered. "She will," I said gently, "and even if she didn't, telling the truth is never wrong." He nodded, though the movement was small and uncertain. When he finally stepped inside, his eyes stayed glued to me until the last possible second before the classroom swallowed him up. I waited near the bulletin board until the final bell rang, and then stepped into the classroom. The room smelled like crayons and the faint sweetness of the hand sanitizer they kept in pump bottles by the door. Ms. Rayburn greeted me with a soft, understanding smile. "I'm glad you could stay for a moment," she said. Leo glanced at me from the reading corner, a picture book open in his lap, but his attention pinned entirely on us. Ms. Rayburn led me toward her desk and picked up a sheet of notebook paper. My stomach tightened even before she handed it to me. "Leo wrote this yesterday," she said softly. Across the top of the page, in careful pencil strokes, were the words, "Who shows up?" The rest of the page was pure truth. "My mom shows up. She helps me with my homework. She makes breakfast. She paints my room with stars. She comes to every school thing. My grandma used to show up. She forgot me on Christmas. My mom didn't forget. She never forgets." That's the difference. I didn't realize I was gripping the paper too tightly until I forced my fingers to relax. My throat felt thick. "He wasn't writing for a grade," Ms. Rayburn said. "He was writing because he needed to." I swallowed slowly. "He's processing." "He's doing it beautifully," she said. "And bravely." Behind us, I heard quiet footsteps. Leo had wandered closer, still holding the picture book like a shield. "Mom?" he asked. "Did I write bad?" I crouched to his eye level and put an arm around him. "You wrote honestly, and that takes more courage than most grown-ups have." He looked at Ms. Rayburn for confirmation, and she nodded warmly. Some of the tension in his shoulders eased, and he leaned lightly against me. "We'd like to encourage his writing," Ms. Rayburn said. "Maybe get him involved in the science club, too. He shows a lot of curiosity." Leo's eyes lit up. "Science club? You'd be perfect for it," she said. He nodded slowly, hope blooming across his expression like sunrise through clouds. We thanked her and walked hand in hand out of the building. The cold air bit at our cheeks, but Leo didn't seem bothered. He kept kicking small piles of snow on the sidewalk, humming to himself. My phone rang just as we reached the car. My boss's name, Elisa Marshall, flashed across the screen. "Give me a second, buddy," I said, answering. "Hi, Elisa." "Nora," she said, sounding unusually cheerful. "I'm glad I caught you. I wanted to say, you've been doing incredible work these past months. Organized, steady, creative. And your last report? Outstanding." I blinked, taken aback. "Thank you," I said, unsure where this was going. "We're promoting you," she said, "Senior Strategy Coordinator." The cold wind didn't feel cold anymore. "Wait, really?" "You earned it," Elisa said. "Take the weekend to celebrate with Leo. You deserve something good." When I hung up, Leo was bouncing lightly on his toes. "What happened? What happened?" "I got a promotion," I said. His eyes widened. "Does that mean, can we get pizza tonight?" I laughed. "Yes, it definitely means pizza." He threw both arms up in victory and shouted, "Yes!" to the empty parking lot. We got pizza, pepperoni, extra cheese, the same booth we always sat in. Leo talked non-stop about science club, about planets and telescopes and black holes he wanted to learn about. Sauce smeared across his chin, his face bright and open. For the first time since Christmas morning, he looked light. At home, he ran to his room and flipped on the switch for the glow-in-the-dark stars we'd just put up the night before. "Look, Mom," he said, lying back on his pillow to stare upward. "I see it," I said. "It's beautiful." He pointed at a streak of stickers forming a curved tail. "That's the comet. I put it right there so I can wish on it." "What are you wishing for?" I asked. He thought for a long moment. "For things to stay like this." My heart pulled tight, warm and aching. When he finally drifted to sleep, I tucked his astronaut plush under his arm, kissed his forehead, and left the door slightly open. I should have gone to bed. It had been a long day, and my body was heavy with the kind of tired that comes from emotional rebuilding, but curiosity tugged at me. I checked my phone. 32 unread messages. The family group chat was exploding. "You humiliated us. You're tearing this family apart. Your mother is devastated. This is ridiculous for one mistake. Kids don't remember Christmas anyway. You should be ashamed." I scrolled slowly, each message more dismissive, more manipulative than the last. Once, these words would have crushed me, made me doubt myself, made me feel selfish for wanting fairness for my child. Not now. I opened the video from Christmas, 36 gifts, the chaos of wrapping paper flying, my mother's laughter, Carla's bragging, Neil's filming. And in the corner of the frame, Leo, small and quiet and waiting for nothing. I hit upload. "This is why," I wrote. Then I left the group. Blocked every number except Aunt Lorraine's. Set my phone face down on the counter. The heater clicked softly, filling the house with warm air. In the quiet, I walked to Leo's doorway again. He was asleep under the starry ceiling we'd made together. His small hand rested on his pillow, relaxed now, not clenched the way it had been in my mother's living room. I leaned against the doorframe and let myself breathe. This peace wasn't accidental, it wasn't luck, it wasn't temporary. It was the result of choices. Choices to protect him. Choices to rebuild him. Choices to show up for him in every way my own mother never did for me. And I knew, without needing anyone's validation, without needing forgiveness from people who never gave it, that we were finally on the right path. The world outside could judge. They could gossip. They could lie. But inside this house, under this painted sky of stars, my son was healing, and I wasn't going back. The first letter showed up on a Thursday morning, slipped halfway under the front door like something that didn't want to be found but needed to be. I almost stepped on it on my way to the kitchen. A pastel envelope, the kind you find in the bargain section of the pharmacy greeting card aisle. My mother's handwriting, looping, dramatic, unmistakable, curled across the front. I didn't open it. Not right away. Leo was in the living room arranging the glow-in-the-dark planets we'd bought into a pattern only he understood. He hummed quietly to himself, the kind of absent, soft sound he only made when he felt safe. I didn't want to break that spell. So I slid the envelope onto the counter and poured him cereal instead. He looked up at the sound of the box hitting the table. "Mom, someone sent a letter?" "Just something from Grandma," I said lightly. "We'll look at it later." He didn't ask more. He'd already learned that letters from my mother were never simple. After he left for school, I stood alone in the kitchen staring at the envelope for a long moment before finally tearing it open. The paper inside smelled faintly of my mother's perfume, floral and sharp. "Nora," it began, "you're overreacting. Children don't remember small mistakes. I love Leo, and you know it. You are blowing a minor oversight into something catastrophic, and it's hurting everyone. Please stop this before you ruin our family for good." At the bottom was a line written harder, the pen pressing into the paper enough to dent it. "If you continue down this path, You'll force me to make choices I don't want to make. I folded the letter carefully, not out of sentiment, but because rage makes your hands shake. That was the first. The second arrived the next day. Another pastel envelope, another performance. This time the tone was softer at first. Sweetheart, I miss you. I miss my grandson. I don't know why you're punishing me. I made one mistake. One. You don't throw family away over one lapse. Then it turned. You're acting like some kind of martyr. Leo needs stability. He needs a full family, not just you. The word just burned through the paper like acid. I dropped the letter into the folder I'd started keeping in my office. Evidence, proof, patterns, a lifetime printed in ink. I was still sliding it inside when I heard a small voice behind me. Mom? Leo stood in the doorway, holding the hoodie he'd worn to school. His eyes drifted toward the letter in my hand. Is that from Grandma again? Yes. His gaze dropped to the floor. Did she say something mean? I came closer, kneeling so we were eye level. She said something wrong. That's different. He nodded, like that answer gave him permission to keep breathing normally. What does the red line mean? He asked suddenly, pointing to the back of the unopened envelope still sitting on the counter. My mother had drawn a crooked underline beneath the flap in red ink. I forced a steady tone. Sometimes people underline things when they want to be heard. But why does it look like she's angry? His question was so sincere it felt like a punch to the ribs. Because, I said quietly, some adults don't know how to express their feelings the right way. He accepted that with a small sigh, then wandered back to the living room. A moment later, I heard him whisper to his astronaut plushie, I would never write like that to my mom. My throat tightened. The third letter came on Saturday morning by priority mail. Rushed, urgent, intentionally intimidating. The envelope was thicker, heavier. Inside, her handwriting was fiercer. Carla and I have been discussing what's best for Leo. We feel strongly that cutting us off is harming him. If you don't come to your senses soon, we will need to involve the proper channels. Leo deserves a family who cares. The last sentence made my pulse spike. A family who cares. As if I didn't show up for him every single day. As if remembering your grandson at Christmas was optional. At the bottom was the letterhead of a small law office in Riverstone. Not a full petition. Yet. But a threat. A warning. A promise. I slipped that letter into the folder, too. The folder was getting thicker. By Sunday, I stopped feeling startled when envelopes came. They were as predictable as the mail truck itself. Every morning, another pastel apology wrapped in blame, another plea wrapped in threat. Think of your mother's health. You've broken her heart. Leo will resent you one day. You aren't the victim. That last line was underlined twice, hard. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I kept filling the folder. One afternoon, while Leo was working on his solar system model for Science Club, I opened the latest letter and scanned it quickly, already expecting the mix of guilt and manipulation. But this one was different. Nora, I won't be ignored like this. A grandmother has rights. The moment I read that sentence, a cold ripple moved through me. Rights. She had used the word rights. Not love, not connection. Rights. Across the room, Leo looked up from his model. Mom, why do you look like that? I put the letter down immediately. Just thinking. He patted over, holding a small plastic Saturn. Are we okay? Yes, I said. We are absolutely okay. He nodded, satisfied, and returned to his project. But he paused again, halfway across the room, turning back with a question heavy enough to stop my breath. Mom, do I have to tell Grandma good things so she won't be mad? I stood up so quickly my chair scraped the floor. I crossed the room and cupped his face gently. No, I said. You don't ever have to say anything you don't want to say. Not to anyone. He blinked, eyes wide, and then he leaned into my hands with a slow, relieved exhale. Later that afternoon, after Leo fell asleep on the couch mid-episode of a space documentary, I sat at my office table and spread out the letters like a grim timeline. Each one a brick in the wall of everything she refused to see. I took photos of all of them, organized them by date, scanned and uploaded them to my drive. Documentation wasn't paranoia, it was protection. As I was labeling the files, my phone buzzed. "Aunt Lorraine." I answered immediately. "Are you holding up?" she asked. "I'm trying," I said. "She keeps sending letters. They're getting worse." "I know," she said. "She called me yesterday sobbing and furious. I told her favoritism has consequences, but she didn't want to hear it." Lorraine hesitated. "She's thinking about taking legal steps, Nora." "I figured," I said. "If it comes to that," she continued gently, "I'll testify. I've seen the way things have been since you were little." Warmth filled my chest, gratitude mixed with grief. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. It's simply the truth." After we hung up, I walked to the couch and brushed a hand through Leo's hair. He stirred slightly, but didn't wake. He deserved better than this emotional tug-of-war. He deserved peace. The next morning, when I opened my mailbox, I found another envelope, but this one was unmistakably official. White, crisp, bearing a law office seal. A chill washed over me. Before I could even open it, my phone vibrated from my coat pocket. A new message from Carla. "Don't panic when the letter arrives, we warned you." I stood completely still on the front porch, snowflakes melting against my coat. Their letters weren't just words anymore. This was war, and they had just declared it. The envelope felt heavier than paper should. It sat on my kitchen table like a stone, thick and official, the embossed seal of Price and Dale family legal practice, stamped across the corner. Snow dripped from my boots onto the floor as I stood staring down at it, unable to bring myself to touch it. Some part of me already knew what was inside. Some part of me knew this wasn't an apology or an explanation or even a plea. This was a move, a choice, a declaration, and one I couldn't ignore. I finally slid a finger under the flap, tore it open, and unfolded the stack of documents. The heading glared up at me in bold letters. Petition for grandparent visitation rights in the matter of the minor child. Leo Ellington. My breath left me in one sharp, painful exhale. Behind me, Leo sat on the living room rug, building a Lego spaceship with focused intensity. He had no idea that a battle had just been brought to our doorstep. No idea that someone who forgot him on Christmas morning believed she now had a legal right to claim him. I skimmed the pages. My mother, Diane, claimed that I had unreasonably restricted access, that I was isolating Leo, that I was damaging his emotional development by denying him a stable extended family. Then came the part that made my stomach clench. Petitioner believes respondent is emotionally unstable and making decisions not in the child's best interest. I closed my eyes. They weren't just trying to insert themselves into Leo's life. They were trying to undermine me as a mother. And at the bottom of the page, in neat type, failure to respond may result in temporary visitation granted to petitioner. My hands shook, not out of fear, but out of something colder, sharper, a clarity edged with fury. "Mom?" Leo's soft voice floated from behind me. "Are you okay?" I turned, folding the papers before he could see the header. "Just reading mail, sweetheart." "Is it bad mail?" he asked, instinctively knowing more than he should. "Not for you," I said. "That's what matters." I tucked the petition into a folder and grabbed my phone. My fingers dialed the number from memory. Attorney Marlene Holt answered on the second ring. "Nora?" "I got the letter," I said. "It's a petition." "Bring it in today," she said with instant professional calm. "We're going to fight this." I glanced toward the living room. "She's accusing me of isolating him." "Accusations aren't facts," Marlene said. "Do you have documentation?" "I have everything." "Good," she said. "We'll need it." After we hung up, I pulled the large leather-bound folder from my office shelf, the one I'd started filling the moment the first guilt-soaked letter arrived. I spread its contents across the dining table. Christmas photos, screenshots of texts, saved voicemails where my mother said Leo wasn't her responsibility, the crumpled receipt from the panic gifts, the birthday card where she wrote the wrong age, the notes from Leo's teacher about his emotional processing, the letter with "You are not the victim" underlined in red, a pattern, a history, a truth they couldn't rewrite. Leo wandered in as I sorted through papers. "Are you making something?" "Yes," I said, carefully keeping the tension out of my voice. "I'm making sure our life stays peaceful." He nodded like that made perfect sense. Then he went back to his spaceship. When I arrived at Marlene's office that afternoon, she looked over the petition with a slow, controlled exhale. "They're using intimidation tactics," she said, "trying to push you into compliance before you know your rights." "They thought I'd fold," I said. Marlene lifted her eyes. "Are you going to?" "No." "Good," she said, "because we are not just defending against this, we are going to dismantle it." She flipped through the papers I brought, placing sticky notes and highlighting sections with the precision of a surgeon. When she reached the Christmas video still, her mouth tightened. "That's damning," she said. "Judges take patterns very seriously. We'll use the video, and the letters, and that birthday card. Good grief." "She didn't know his age," I said softly. "She didn't even guess close." For a moment, we sat there together in quiet understanding, the kind that forms only when truth is no longer a secret. "Court date will be set for fall," Marlene said finally. "You'll get a notice soon." 8 months. A long wait. A long shadow cast over everything. But I wasn't doing this alone. When I left the office, I called Aunt Lorraine. She picked up on the first ring. "I heard from Carla," she said. "I'm guessing you got the petition." "Yes." "I'll testify," she said immediately. "I'll tell the judge exactly what I've seen. Your mother's favoritism isn't new, Nora." I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel with one hand. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," she said. "Thank yourself. You're protecting that boy in a way no one ever protected you." When I got home, Leo was at the dining table coloring a planet with wide, sweeping strokes. He looked up as I walked in. "Did you fix the bad mail?" he asked. "I'm working on it," I said. "But nothing's going to happen to you." He studied my face carefully. Children know when adults are avoiding truth. Children sense storms long before we name them. "Is someone trying to take me away?" he asked quietly. The world stopped moving. I crouched down in front of him and took both his hands. "No," I said firmly. "No one is taking you anywhere, I promise you. You are safe. With me. Always." His shoulders relaxed a fraction. "Okay," he whispered. That night, after he fell asleep under the soft glow of his star stickers, I turned the dining table into a war room. Documents organized, timelines drawn, labels applied. Christmas, letters, missed calls, threats, manipulation, receipts, voicemails, wrong birthday card. When I was halfway through sorting, my phone buzzed. Carla, of course. A new message flashed across the screen. "Good luck at court. Everyone knows who the unstable one is." I let out a slow, controlled breath. The woman who watched her mother heap gifts onto 3 children while ignoring mine now felt entitled to judge my stability. I didn't respond. Instead, I picked up the last document from the pile, the one that tied all of this together. The Christmas video, still. Leo sitting alone in the corner while 36 gifts piled up around his cousins, his hands folded, his smile tightening, his hope shrinking. I slid it into a clear sleeve and placed it at the top of the stack. When the judge saw that image, they would understand more in 30 seconds than any letter or speech could explain. At midnight, I finally turned off the dining room light. The evidence folder sat complete, thick and heavy with truth. This wasn't the life I wanted. This wasn't the fight I asked for. But it was the fight I would win. For Leo. For the love he deserved. For the future no one would steal from him. When I crawled into bed, my body was exhausted, but my mind was clear. They wanted a war. They were going to get one. But they had no idea who I was when it came to protecting my son. Spring crept in quietly, softening the edges of winter until the snow outside our windows melted into thin silver streams. The world felt gentler, somehow. And in that gentleness, Leo began to bloom again in ways I hadn't realized he'd been holding back. One morning, as sunlight spilled across the kitchen table, he sat eating toast and swinging his legs, humming something tuneless and bright. He hadn't hummed in months, not since before Christmas. When he finished breakfast, he wiped crumbs off his shirt and said, "Mom, last night I dreamed I was floating in space. But not alone. You were there too, and we could breathe." I felt something warm unfurl in my chest. "That sounds like a beautiful dream." He nodded with quiet certainty. It was. Outside, the world was thawing. Inside, my son was too. At school, he threw himself into science club like it was the best thing that had ever happened to him. Every day he came home with a new fact about Jupiter's storms, or Saturn's rings, or the temperature on Mercury. And every evening he added another detail to his solar system model. He painted Jupiter's bands with careful stripes, dabbed flecks onto Mars to make it look more dusty, and insisted Pluto needed space in his model, even if other people forget about it. I didn't miss the metaphor. I didn't point it out. One windy afternoon in late March, Leo came bursting through the front door with a huge smile. "Ms. Rayburn said my model is going in the hallway display." "That's amazing," I said, as he hopped out of his shoes mid-step, "and she said I'm really good at explaining things." He puffed his chest out a little. "She said I'm a natural teacher." He glowed, not because someone remembered him, but because someone saw him. I held on to that moment for days. Baseball sign-ups started in April. I wasn't sure if Leo wanted to play again. He'd been nervous around crowds lately. But when I asked, he nodded shyly. At his first practice, he stood near the back of the group, small and unsure, twisting his glove between his hands. I crouched beside him. "You're here," I whispered. "That's already brave." He didn't say anything, but he scooted a little closer to me before joining the others. The wind was sharp that day, carrying the smell of damp grass. The kids dropped balls and laughed too loudly. Coaches shouted encouragement. Parents clapped from the bleachers. It was ordinary and chaotic and